Hip, what's up, man? It's good to see you. I'm looking at myself in the camera and the playback or whatever, and it looks a little better than it has in the past, and so it's going to continue to get better as far as the quality and everything goes.
Yeah, your jaundice is getting is getting better.
Yeah, I actually, surprisingly that you say that, I got some blood work done, and I know yesterday was like or last week it was just like yellow, right? The screen was yellow,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's jaundice and excess bilirubin, which is some sort of something produced in the liver, has always been an issue of mine. And
Really?
so, yeah, so sometimes
Here I
like
am
my
cracking
eyes get
jokes.
a little yellow. And so, yeah, I know you're joking, but that's actually something I need to be aware of. So I did have my blood work done. I've got our good friend, obviously Johnny Loretti, who's my trainer and personal coach. And he looked at my results. He's like, yeah, this is a little elevated. So we need to look at that and make sure we're staying on top of that. So, at 42 years old, I'm no spring chicken. I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm no spring chicken either. And so blood work, nutrition, these types of things that I neglected for 4 decades of my life because it wasn't important at that time, have become increasingly important to me.
Yeah.
So I figured you'd appreciate that as a data and numbers guy, where I am just
Yeah.
not.
I do appreciate that. Although, I've never done a full panel
You should
yet.
do it. You should do it.
I don't know what it is. I'm like, yeah, I should do that. It's like going to the DMV. It's like, yeah, I should do that, but I don't want to today.
But it's
Which I
it's
needed to go to
different
the
than the
DMV. So
DMV. Yeah, well, so do I, because I changed addresses and I need a new license. And my ex-wife told me
uh,
that when you go in because you moved out of state, you need to do an exam. I'm like, oh, lovely. I mean, the
uh,
DMV is already fun enough as it is, and then you have to do an exam.
yeah.
But
Anyhow,
I it is
first world
important.
problems.
It's important, and I think there's a lot of underlying factors that we can address. Just talk to Johnny actually, because I think I did the DNA thing.
Totally.
The first thing he sent me when I did the DNA thing, he's like, "Hey, I got the results for your DNA. I wanted to let you know it looks like," and he pulled up from the DNA results because they can look at your genetics and what you're disposed to.
Yeah.
That's the right word. Uh, he sent me a message like, you're prone to snacking. I'm like, duh. Like, dude, I need to do a DNA test.
Was he
Dude,
joking or was that seriously in the
he was
report?
it was in the
Oh, okay. I was gonna
report,
say,
but
really?
no, it really was in the report. And there's people you see
Salsa
them, they're
and
like
chips
string
is in your
beans.
destiny.
Dude, I'm like, really? I've been talking about it for 8 years. Yeah, like of course, I love to snack. I love chips and salsa. Like I love
Uh,
just eating all the time. I'm surprised I'm not fat. I mean, I could lose a few pounds, but I'm surprised I'm just active enough to offset it. But anyways,
totally.
we got into some stuff that was actually really beneficial, including my testosterone, which is super low, super low. So yeah, there's some things that need to be addressed under the surface that I think will improve life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I need to
man,
get
let's go
after
get
it.
it done.
Okay. How you doing? Do you have a good weekend? What did you do this weekend? Last
Kid,
nonchalant question.
yeah, the kids were with me, which is awesome. I have the kids. So let me tell you our schedule. So some of like I finalized our divorce, going through a divorce, horrible, hard. The last couple of weeks have been really good, all things considered. I feel like I'm getting back
Yeah.
on my game. There's, a lot of people, a lot of men really struggle for years and years with a failing marriage. I'm not one of those guys. Like I don't have 2 years or
You're
whatever to
like, I got to
complain and
turn this
mope and bitch
ship
about it.
fast. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And of course, there's things that I'm upset by, I'm saddened by, things I regret. There's a lot of that, but I don't have time to wallow in that.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're great from the perspective of not wasting time on things that aren't serving you. That's something that I've always been impressed by. That's
I
like your
appreciate
default.
that.
Like, okay, does this serve me? No, it doesn't. Okay, pivot. And so I'm sure you're just
Well, I mean, to some
on the
degree,
on the track. Yeah.
yeah, to some degree. I mean, honestly, there's things that I do or behaviors that I engage in, or drinking, is a big issue of mine
Yeah.
that clearly I was engaged in for years that did not serve me. So, I mean, let's be honest
Yeah.
about that too. But your question, what did I do this? Oh, so my schedule. So our schedule. I'm trying to be. I want to be as transparent as I can about this because like I don't feel the need to let you into my life as a listener. Like I don't
Yeah.
really feel that need, but I do feel a need to serve you. And I know there's a lot of men who are listening to this who are in a similar situation, maybe even a worse situation, who I hope through my own missteps and shortcomings, I can serve in some way. So, our schedule with my ex wife, she has the kids every single Monday and Tuesday. Those are her nights, Monday or days, Monday, Tuesday, those are hers. Wednesday, Thursday, those are mine. That's just what it is. And then we shift every other weekend. So I think they actually call it technically like a 2-2-5 schedule. This is what they call it, where
Yeah.
she's
I
got the kids
remember.
2, then I have them for 5, then she has them for 2, and then I have 2, and then she has them for 5. And so it's a two two
Got it.
five schedule. I
Got it.
I don't want to say this because it sounds weird, but I like that schedule because it's predictable. It gives me enough time with the kids. Man, 5 days without my kids is rough. It is rough. But I know a lot of guys don't even see their children. So I'm not going to complain about
Yeah.
that at all. So, anyways, that's what we do. But long answer to your question, I had the kids this weekend and we went hiking. My youngest is hilarious. He's wild. He's rambunctious. The gray hairs that you see here coming in and starting, those are his. Those are from him. None of my other kids. Those are from him.
Yeah.
He caught, it was funny. We went to Red Cliffs. So we live in southern Utah. We went to Red Cliffs, which is a beautiful little hike, small, short hike, and lots of tadpoles, lots of frogs mating right now. And so we were at the little pools, and he's like, "Dad, there's 2 frogs. They're wrestling." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, they're doing jujitsu. That's exactly what they're doing." He's like, "What are they
He's got his
doing?"
back. Yeah.
And yeah, he's got her back. And he's like, "What are they doing?" I'm like, "Well, they're mating." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "They're making baby frogs." He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Well, who's on?" This is funny. He's like, "Who's on top? Like who's on what frog's on the top? Is the boy or the girl on top?" I'm like, I guess it depends on what they're into, I suppose." And he's like, kind of looks at me. He's like, "The hell are you talking about?" But so he caught frogs. He caught a baby bird
That's funny.
yesterday. He's a crazy kid. So we went hiking, went to the park. I'm not a park guy. I hate the park. The park is stupid. It's so dumb, but the kids like it. So we made up a new game.
Uh,
It's called I'm a dad. Okay, I'm a dad at heart. We made up a new game. It's called Peanut Pooper. Don't worry about it. Like I can explain the rules at some point, but I'm a dad at heart, so I love that shit. So Peanut Pooper, we played at the park. It was a good weekend.
that's funny. I hear peanut. I don't even know where did Cole get this from? He has interchanged peanut and penis for whatever reason.
Oh, it's not
And
far off.
it kind of makes sense. And that little punk, I'm like working the other day, and he runs by me and goes, "Peanut," and he like flicks me in the junk and runs off. I'm like, "You little punk."
I will
Like
destroy
I
you.
actually tried to trip him as he ran off.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, who's teaching you this crap? It's super
Totally.
funny.
Yeah. We were making fun of my oldest is not going to appreciate this.
Oh
We were
man.
making fun of it was when we were doing some jujitsu. I don't even know how we got talking about it, but me and a friend of mine were talking about again, almost sounds like we're pedophiles or something, but we were talking about, the penis and cashews. And we started calling he's not gonna like this. We started calling my oldest son the cashew kid, and he gets
Cashew kid.
so yeah, he gets so because he had like an American flag thong on at one point. It was doing something. We started calling him the cashew kid, but
Cashew kid. That's
I
funny.
shouldn't have said that because if anybody calls him that, he's gonna
No.
be pissed at me.
No one call him that. That's
Yeah,
funny.
right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Anyways,
Yeah, it
all
was
right,
just
man.
an
Well,
ask.
let's get
Cool.
to it. I said I was going to lead off, correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. I actually got an email, or it was on Instagram, and oh boy, here we go.
That's at Ryan Mickler. If you want to follow Mr. Ryan on Instagram,
Well done. Well done.
Michler.
Transitions are smooth.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So he didn't necessarily want me to ask this, but I'm going to anyways because it's actually important. It's relevant in my life, and it's relevant in a lot of people's lives. Uh, he said this. I'm going to paraphrase some of this because some of it is personal and private, and I don't want to give out too much information, but I'll paraphrase some of this.
Okay.
He says, "How do you get through letting the woman you love and the mother of your children go? My wife and I separated just over a month ago, and then I'm not going to get into the specifics, but she went on a trip.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, where I did exactly what she asked me to do on her getaway, and I didn't quote unquote bother her. It sounds like she needed some space. I made sure all the little things were done. So when she got home and I went back to my work, the kid stuff was all done, etc. When she gets there, her demeanor is immediately negative, and she basically proceeds to tell me she's done with us. I could feel it coming, and I feel like I should have been prepared for this effing smack with a bat. Know that feeling. I'm just crushed, and I feel like a failure. So his question, again, I paraphrase because I don't want to get into specifics, but his question is, how do you get over an ex? And I'm in the midst of that right now. John Kim, who I've had on the podcast, the angry therapist, has some really good information on this. And I like his framing. He frames things a little different. He talks about relationships in the context of not ending, but expiring. And he uses that word very deliberately. You can go listen to why. I like reframes of things, you know, and because it forces you to think. And you might say, well, that's just semantics. And maybe it is, but also it gets you to think about
words
things
have
differently.
Meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he talks about this expiration date, but he did a podcast. I really like his podcast, and I really like him. He's been on our show before, and he said that something to the effect of, you don't get over an ex. You just don't. And why should you want to? And I think that's a really good frame.
Like
my ex-wife and I'm not going to get over her. No, I'm not going to be hung up on her. I'm going to move on in my life. There's going to be somebody else who comes into my life, which I'm all really excited for and open and receptive to. But I'm not going to get over her. Like, why would I try to diminish or dismiss 20 years together of good times and the kids that we had together and the value and the love that she brought into my life and the ways that I felt fulfilled in how I at times served her and the lessons that I learned, even painful and hard lessons. Why would I get over that? It changes, and for me, my ex smacked me in the face with his bat like this guy is talking about 9 months ago. And I'll tell you, the last 3 weeks, 2, 3 weeks, I feel pretty good, all things considered. And I don't feel the need to get over her. But in the spirit of the question that you're asking, I don't want to be consumed by her either, right? I don't want to be infatuated. I don't want to be obsessed. I don't want to let it keep me from finding somebody else or exploring other options or living my life or doing my work or the things I want to do in life. And here's what I would say to any guy who's going through a separation, a breakup, a divorce, painful. I understand. Trust me, I'm there. I understand. Number one, put your emphasis on yourself and make yourself the project. Truly make yourself the project. Get jacked, get lean, get strong, get rich, get out of debt, get your mind right, get your emotional house in order, spiritual growth. Make yourself the project. Too many of us spend so much time making our women the project. And that's a trap because you can't change another person. You can only influence. And the best way to influence another person is through your own behaviors and actions. So change your own behaviors and actions. Make yourself the project. Number two, pick up some new hobbies. Guys, there's things that you've wanted to do that you felt like you couldn't for whatever reason. And some of that may be true. Some of it may be some projection that isn't true. Maybe you thought you couldn't do things because of the relationship dynamic, but you could have, but you didn't. So do it now. Maybe you've always wanted to travel. You're free.
Yeah. Free.
It's weird to say it like that. And I'm not, I don't.
But it's true. You have so much personal time. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, I've got 5 days at times without my kids. I'm free to do what I want. I could use that time to self-destruct, to fall apart, or I could use it to go travel. I could use it to pick up a new hobby. I could try something I've never tried before. I can say yes to something I've never said yes to. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have that quote unquote freedom because I would be engaged in the family unit. And I think that's important. But this is the reality. And so I can make the most of 5 days at a time to do my thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and, watch movies and get shit faced for 5 days in a row until I see my kids again. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to maximize the time that I have. The next thing I would say, get some friends. And I'm talking about male friends. Female companionship, sure. If you want to date, you want to join dating apps, you want to, maybe pursue an interest that you had years ago that you never did, like whatever, do that. Fine. I'm okay with that. But find some male friends. Like find some, you and I, Kip, we did a Ragnar with 6 or 7 of us. We need that. We really need
Yeah.
that. And that's one thing that goes away, especially when you're in a long-term committed relationship, because you want to spend time with her. And who doesn't? Like, what man doesn't? Women are beautiful. They smell good. You love the way they laugh. It's like you have fun together. It's different than a male relationship. It's beautiful, but also like we need some male companionship too. And we need to be able to talk shit to each other. And we need to be able to like call each other up, to lift each other up, to push each other, to motivate, to inspire, to talk to each other in ways that you wouldn't be able necessarily to talk with a woman about. Like, crucial. So make yourself the project, go find some new hobbies and interests, and get yourself some friends. Here, I'll give you one more thing on this. I want to hear from you on this too, Kip. I'm going to give you a do not list. Okay.
I like it. Yeah.
Do not stalk her. Okay. Leave her the fuck alone.
Let go. Yeah.
Okay. Like, you can't drive by her house. Okay. You can't call her and text her every time that you want to. You can't keep asking her questions about what you could have done better. And look, that's soul torturing. Not only is it not fair to her, and it really isn't, because she said, I'm done. And maybe that's not fair. I'll say that. But you got to respect her to some degree. You love her. You got to respect her to some. So don't stalk the poor woman. Leave her alone. And then also, what good comes from opening a wound every time you drive by the house and, maybe there's a new car in the driveway? Like, what good is that going to do for you? It's not good. Just leave her alone. Okay. That's number one. Um, Number two, don't sedate yourself. You don't need to sedate yourself with drugs, with alcohol, with pornography, with gambling, with womanizing, with any of this stuff. You're not in the proper space to do that. I'm not saying that you can't go do certain things, and maybe you should so you can move on with your life, but be careful as to why you're doing it. Are you doing it so you can escape the pain, or are you doing it because you're moving towards a new type of life that you want for yourself? Other don'ts. I mean, that's really it. Well, here's another one. Don't isolate.
Yeah.
Okay, don't sit
Get around
in
people.
your
Yeah.
underwear and get all the Ben and Jerry's ice cream and stay up till 2 a.m. Like, don't do that. Don't do it. And when your buddy calls and he's like, "Hey, bro, I'm worried about you. You okay? Like, hey, let's go grab a bite to eat." Don't say no. I know you don't want to. I really do. I know you don't want to. I know you don't want to go out to eat. I know you don't want to go socialize. I know you don't want to hang out. I know you don't want to answer questions. I know you don't want to be social. It doesn't matter. Go do it. So those are my don'ts. Don't stalk her. Don't sedate. Don't isolate.
Yeah. Man, this is making me depressed. Making me start thinking about, like, back in the day, how miserable this entire process was. You know what? The only thing I'd add is just a thought is that the more that you can have empathy is the more you can let go. If you really think about it, whenever we blame someone, it's a form of victimhood when we blame, because we're saying that it's because of them, and that gives the power over to them, and then there's nothing for us to do, right? And so, and we've talked about this all the time, but like, try to figure out whatever it was, right? and take some ownership and go, okay, well, you know what? I obviously was not amazing. If I was an amazing husband, we wouldn't be in this position. What can I shore up? How can I improve? Find whatever it is that you need to learn from this. And we talked about this even last week, right? One of the best ways to get over a bad past, whether it be regret or anything else, is to become better because of it. So figure out how you rise up as a man in a way that you can almost be grateful for this divorce, because if it wasn't for this divorce, you wouldn't be who you are today. So you got to work on you. You got to take some ownership in regards to how you showed up. So then that way you don't experience this again, right? Most divorces happen again for people. And the reason why is because people walk away from divorces with the idea that it's the other person that's the problem. And then it takes them 3 divorces, or they never learn that actually they were the problem, but they were unwilling to internalize and look at the areas that they need to improve. So take some ownership, figure out what it is that you need to level up around. And then second, have some empathy. When she's angry, have empathy. She's hurting too. Don't lose your humanity in the hurt that you feel from that individual. Try to understand them. You don't have to agree with them. I'm not saying that, but understanding them gives you the knowledge and the intellectual sense to let go and get that they're probably damaged. They're working through their things. And then you can approach that relationship intellectually and not just emotionally, like she's hurting me. No, she's hurting and you're getting lashed out on, perhaps, right? Through her hurting. But the more you can understand that, the more you can not take things personal, the more you're going to be able to, when she comes knocking on the door saying, and she's lonely this weekend and wants to talk to you about a breakup that she just had with some guy, you will handle that appropriately if you have some empathy and you understand what she's doing. But if you approach it as like just straight up emotion, man, you're going to drag yourself through the coals and it's going to be painful for a while.
There's
Those
two
are the only
things that
things
you said. No, those are good. There's 2 things that came to mind that I've told myself when I know that she's struggling with something. And one is, well, she wanted this, not me. And that's a bad attitude because she didn't want this.
Yeah.
Do you think she wanted to divorce a husband that she was with for 2 decades of her life? Do you think that she doesn't want to
have a
see her
split
kids
family
half the time? Do you think she doesn't want to like deal with the drama and the mess and the baggage that comes with that? Do you think that she wants to like actively go out and date other people and go through? She doesn't want that, man. She feels like she might have to. She feels like that's the decision she's going to make, but she didn't want this. Okay, that's one. The other one is, well, I'm giving up way more than she's giving up. And that also is a bad attitude. What do you know? And I'm not saying you, like, I'm saying me, like, what do I
Yeah.
don't know what she's like, I don't know what's going on in her mind. But again, she gave up being married for 20 years. She gave up time with the kids. She gave up a pretty good life from a financial perspective. That's a big, like, the uncertainty, the doubt, the scare, the being scared, the fear, the uncertainty. Like, and I'm not saying that it's all okay. Like, I'm just saying, don't assume that you know what she's dealing with. And if you start to, I found it beneficial for me to give her the benefit of the doubt, because the alternative is to be a contentious asshole, which not only impacts her negatively, but it impacts me. And I would like to move on with my life. I would like to be a good father moving forward. And I would like to find somebody who I can build a relationship with. And I would like to continue to run this movement. And I can't do that if I'm bogged down by contentious, hostile thoughts about what she did or didn't give up or what she did to any of that stuff. It's just
making
not
her wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think we beat a dead horse on that one. Let's go over. Are we going to Facebook? Is that where we're going next?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right. Facebook.com/group/order man if you want to join us there. This question is from Joe Marino. Ryan, there are times where you mentioned that God would and want and does want. What would you say God is in favor of divorce? If not, how did you feel knowing that by getting a divorce, it was going to go against his wishes, despite the fact that you seemed to live a life of his intentions?
This is where I really like this question. You and I talked about it. It seems a little bit maybe accusatory, but I'm not going to try to read into that too much because I do like the question. And here's my thought. No, I don't think our creator wants people to get divorced. Like I don't
For
think
sure.
that's his intention. I
Yeah.
think if there is an intelligent designer of this thing, and I believe there is, then I can only assume that he's it for us. He's not indifferent. He's not against us, but he's for us. And I think that being in a monogamous relationship with somebody that you care about and somebody that you want to serve and somebody that you want to live with and partner with and band with is a good thing for men and women. And
Totally.
you can build a family and there's a lot of structure. I mean, even if you look at it from a data, purely secular standpoint, you can see the data of children that are raised in a home with mothers and fathers relative to children who are raised in single parent households. Like you can see the data. So no,
Yeah.
this is not good, okay, by any stretch of the imagination. But I also don't control everything. I'm not God. If I was, my life probably would look a little different, but I'm not. And I have agency. So I can make choices. I can make good choices and I can also make bad. And I've made plenty of both. But you know who else has agency? Your wife. And I can't control that. So I've had a lot of people say to me, well, Ryan, you shouldn't get divorced because of, X, Y, and Z. Well, that's great. I mean, I really appreciate the sentiment,
Yeah.
but there's another party in this. And so it's not all on, like, I don't get to make that. You know how many emails I've received about like, Ryan, you shouldn't divorce because God doesn't want you to. Well, thanks. Really appreciate
Awesome.
the insight.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I apply that in my life somehow.
Yeah.
So the reason I say that, and I'm trying to get better at this, and I feel like I am, if I want agency of my own life, like I want to make my own decisions. I want to be able to choose the life and the direction I want to go. I like doing it within the voluntary constraints of spirituality. But if I want that for me, then I have to respect that for others.
Yeah.
And so, what was the last part of that question? How do you feel knowing it goes against God's intentions? I think it was something like,
Yeah.
I don't feel
Yep.
good. Don't feel good about that. But also, there are things beyond our control, guys. And we have to play the hand we're dealt sometimes. If you're playing cards, like you don't control the cards, you get what
Yeah.
you get and you play them as best as you can. And hopefully it creates a winning hand. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. But we just try to do the best we can with the hands we're dealt.
Aaron Campbell, if
Actually,
you
hold
could
on.
press
Can I
one. Oh,
can I
yeah. Go
say
ahead.
one more thing about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want it to sound like well, this just what she
Oh,
wanted,
well.
and like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a lot of my own. So I'm not saying like I was just dealt this hand because that's too passive for me. There was things I would have done differently, and moving forward in relationships with other women, I will do that differently. I don't want it to come across as like it was just a hand I was dealt.
Yeah.
No, like I actually had an active hand in it as well, and I just want
Yeah.
to be really clear about that.
Well, and what the way I see that, Ryan, is you're dealing in reality and you've let go of the expectation that like it shouldn't be this way. Like the reality of it
It is,
is it is what it is, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, you can learn, and I'm not saying that you're not saying that, but like, yes, you can learn or whatever, but you can't change the past. So Ryan's dealing in reality going, well, this is now the cards. Now I'm dealing with the deck that I've co-created with my ex. I got to deal with what is now in my lap, right?
exactly.
And we can talk about all we want and go, well, it should or should not be, but it is what it is. And so at this point, it's like, all right, now how do I learn and move and grow from it?
I had a really this weekend. was, and this is going to apply whether you're going through, I know there's a lot of divorce talk right here, guys. It's just something a lot of men are dealing with. But let's say you're in a great relationship. Something I learned this weekend, or at least acknowledged, was I was I was on a hike with my kids. I told you that. And I took a picture. I was like, hey guys, let's just take a picture. I did a little selfie of all of us because, I like to have those pictures and scroll through them and remember good times. And so I looked at this picture and I was looking at it last night. I'm like, that was a good time. That was a lot of fun. And I got thinking about it. I'm like, man, I haven't had too many of those days over the past 9 months. Like, I really haven't. Getting a little emotional here. I really haven't had a lot of those days, but that was a good day. And I thought to myself last night, I'm like, what made that a good day? Why was that so good? And there's the obvious, I'm spending time with my kids and we're laughing, we're playing, we're outside, obviously we know sunlight helps with your mood and like all of that. But you know what made it a good day? I was present. That's what made it a good day. I wasn't thinking about what happened yesterday or last year. I wasn't thinking about my schedule next week. I wasn't thinking about my goals and objectives over the next 1, 5, and 10 years. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was fully present, engaged. And that's what made it a good day. And how many times in my life have I been stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, irritable, frustrated, angry, impatient because I'm thinking about the past or I'm thinking about the future instead of thinking about this exact moment right here and capitalizing on the moment that we have right in front of us right now. I'm going to get better at that because that was a pretty big epiphany and that just happened last night. I really want to get better at that.
I love that. Okay, Chris Rogers. Is it normal to feel guilty when trying to level up and reach your dreams? I'm a police officer in California, and when asked my coworkers what my career goals are, I tell them that my vision and dream of owning a $10 million company, owning my dream home, but then I feel like I'm telling them that being a cop isn't good enough for me. And I feel bad that I don't hang out with these guys outside of work because I prioritize MMA training, my girlfriend, eating clean over playing video games with them and going out for drinks. Sovereignty, order of man, changed my life. Thanks for all that you do, Jeffrey. Or that's it, Chris.
Just be careful of being judgmental about their life. Like you talked about, what do you say? Going out for drinks, playing video games like that. Like,
yeah. And that they're cops and he's like, this ain't good enough for me. Right.
Yeah. So be careful because then that's what you're doing. You are saying it's not good enough for you, or they're not good enough for you, or their behavior is not up to par with yours. I'm guilty of that. I'm just saying, be careful of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're careful of that side of things, then I think having your own goals and desires and ambitions is okay. And it's not an issue. There's no problem in wanting to own a $10 million business. There's no problem in wanting to grow and develop. I think we should want those things. But if it's because you have a level of disdain for other people, you got to let go of those expectations of others. And again, we talked about this a minute ago. They have autonomy over their lives. They have control over their lives. And it's not your job to tell them what they should or should not be doing. It's not your job to say you shouldn't be playing video games. It's not your job to say you shouldn't be whatever. Let go of that. And that's Rich coming from a guy who's, I think his job is to illuminate a path that might be more effective for men. But like the last year of the podcast, if you listen, the tone has changed. I do care. I do care about what you do, but I'm not vested in what you do. If you want to eat, bonbons and Cheetos and whatever on the couch and, play video games all night, I mean, I care. I don't think that's good for you, but it's not my job to rescue you from that. I don't feel the need to rescue you from that. And I don't have any disdain towards you. I don't know what your life is like. I don't know what you've dealt with. I mean, there's one thing that I've been taught over the past 9 months is that everybody's walking around with some real bullshit they're dealing with and nobody's talking about it. And everybody's putting on a smiley face and everybody's hurting in some way. Everyone is hurting. And I know that because I've been hurting and I walk around with a smile on my face and I play the part and I, dress up and play the role that everybody expects me to. So if I'm doing that, everybody else is doing that. So as far as the guilt, where does that come from? I don't know. You got to get right with being successful. A lot of people feel guilty for being successful because they've been conditioned as children to believe that money's bad or that success comes at the expense of other people. So I would really examine where that comes from. Think about the phrases that you heard when you were a kid. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah.
Penny saved is a penny earned. Oh, we don't have enough money for that. I would never spend money on that. Oh, those rich people, yeah, they can afford to go on vacation, but we can't do that. Think about all those scripts that you've been living into your entire life. We can't afford that. Why? You're so selfish. Why would you even ask us to get that? This is stuff that we hear as children, and then we operate our entire lives. I call them money demons. And I had to let go of a lot of my money demons. I had to let go of a lot of the scarcity that was around me when I was a young man. That's not an indictment against my mother or anybody else. That just was the nature of it. And I had to let go of that and realize, no, there's an abundance and I should be wealthy and I should be prosperous. And when I am, that's an indicator that I'm serving more people in more significant ways. And so I've attached making money and being successful financially to doing good in the world. You think money's going to come easier to me because of that mentality? Of course it is. Of course it is. Because I've internalized making money with doing good. And you might say, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. Well, it is what it is. And that's why, at the risk of being arrogant, that's why we've been financially successful.
Totally. Well, and Chris, to be frank, obviously I don't know, but to be frank, you might be judgmental, and that's why you are feeling a little guilty about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we truly believe that those around us are fully capable of accomplishing the same thing that we can accomplish, then that changes the opinion that we have. We're not going to feel guilty. We're to just see that as a choice, right? That they don't make it a priority, thus it's not a big deal. But if we are being a little judgmental in our thought process and we're comparing ourselves to them and we're saying, I'm going to be better than they are, well, that does come with guilt of like, oh, I shouldn't say that because that's mean. Yeah, because you're thinking mean
Right.
around the
Right.
thought process. So just be mindful of that. And you might, that might be an internal struggle where you need to get some clarity around, make sure that you're not being judgmental of other people and where they are. The other thing is, and I know you're not asking this question, Chris, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, is be careful not to focus in the now, right? Ryan just shared about the power of being present. And that same thing is applicable to work. So if I were your boss and you're just excited about the future and I'm going to own this, I'm going to own that, but you're not trying to be the best police officer possible right now, that's a problem for me. Like, you need to do you first. You need to kill it at what's on your plate. Otherwise, I'm going to even start getting the perception that this guy's not in this job, right? The quality of work he's bringing to the table. He's so focused on tomorrow that he's not dealing with today. So be careful. And I'm not saying you are doing that, but some people do this. They get the dopamine hit and the excitement about, oh, and someday I'm going to blah, blah, someday. And then from a leadership perspective, you often go, yeah, but guess what, dude? You're not killing it today. So you do you get the stuff that's in your lap today. You kill at it today. Awesome. That stuff's awesome. But nothing, and it kind of rubs me wrong, to be honest with you, when I hear people like, oh, someday, but they're not killing it with what's the opportunities currently on their lap. So make sure not to do that. And I would even recommend, if you're a little bit nervous about manage those relationships and perceptions, because whether people like this or not, we need to manage perceptions. I'm a huge, this is a whole other tangent we can talk about some other time. But if you want to, and these guys are like, hey man, what's your goal right now? What your answer should be is to be the best cop possible. Because that should be the next step goal, to be the best at what you do currently. And that's only going to help you achieve these future goals anyway.
Yeah. This is, I think about this in the context of even like martial arts and training that way. It's like, guys come in and they've got big egos and they've, puffed out chests and they're like, hey, if I ever gotten this, I would do this. Like, really? Show me.
Yeah.
Show me. Like, go do that to that guy. You've got 50 pounds on him. You're clearly bigger and strong. Go do that. What you just said you're going to do. Go do that to that guy. And then if he has the balls to go do it, he gets his ass kicked.
Yep.
Like it's the same thing. Oh, it's someday, 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 someday. Really show me that you can get that report in on time.
Yeah.
Can you do that? No, I can't. Well, I don't like doing that. Okay, then you're not ready for someday. Like you're not ready for now,
You
let
don't
alone
deserve
someday.
someday. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's speed up our answers a little bit, Kip, because we got some, and that's on me,
Yeah.
but we got some great questions. Let's speed these answers up a little bit and try to get through as broad a array of questions as we can.
Okay, sounds good. We only got 2 more on the Facebook group, and then we can jump over to yours. So Jeffrey Young, how do you help a loved one who feels like they are getting you down? They are letting you down, but you feel like they are doing the best they can in the grand scheme of things. Example, they think that they are a failure because they can't work due to one of the kids being sick.
Empathy.
A loved one
Is my
feeling
answer.
down because, yeah.
Empathy. You're big on that, Kip. You've talked a lot about that, but and that's not my strong suit, but I think empathy is the answer to that. And empathy doesn't mean rushing in to solve people's problems. That's not empathetic. That's selfish sometimes because you want to be the white knight and the hero. Empathy is just putting your arm around somebody and saying, "What's going on? Like, tell me about it. Talk to me. Let me know what you're dealing with," and asking really good questions and then just listening. Again, not my strong suit, something I am trying to work on, but I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver. And that's part of the reason I've had a lot of success in my life in certain aspects. And also part of the reason why I haven't been successful, in other aspects of my life, because I rushed to solve everything. And instead, maybe I should have just been more empathetic and just shut up. Like, just shut up and listen. I'm talking to myself right now. Just shut up and listen to what people like. Listen to them, listen to their stories, listen to what they're sharing, listen to the lessons, listen to where they want to go. Don't interject. Don't put your own stuff. Just listen. And it's amazing what people will tell you and what conclusions they'll draw by just being able to talk to somebody.
I like it. All right, Stephen Rager, how do you handle when your best isn't good enough? Tricky conversation in our hustle culture. Many people get taken out of for reasons beyond their control. COVID, divorce, theft, can't find people, cancer, proximity. 65% of small businesses fail in the first 10 years. Someone has to come in second or third place at major sporting events, and they did their best. There's a bunch of dead bodies on Mount Everest. I'm sure they all tried their best. This isn't for those that aren't doing their best. Sometimes shit happens. It's more about you, and you made the effort in the first place and trying to keep trying. It's not the knock punch that counts. It's how we bounce back after getting punched down repeatedly. So how do you handle when your best isn't good enough?
Well, number one, who told you it's not good enough? Where are you getting that from? Why isn't your best good enough? Because you're comparing yourself to everybody else. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You're saying like, oh, well, second and third. So what? So what? Let's take business, for example. Let's say you're in a very niche business venture and there's 3 big organizations and you guys are competing. And there's one that's always going to have the highest gross revenue, for example. It's one metric we can use. And you come in second or third, but you're pushing all the time. Because you're pushing, you grew your business from 1 million to 10 million to 100 to $1 billion valuation. But that other guy is worth 1.5 billion. Who cares? Like, how many people did you serve? How did you get out of
Did
debt?
you
Did you
learn?
serve your
Did you
family?
grow?
What did you grow
Yeah.
from? Like, who cares? That guy that's doing 1.5 billion, he's just paving the path. Like, good, you can go first. I'll follow you. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So like, where are we getting this idea that our best is not good enough? It is good enough. It's good. It's good enough. And that's not an excuse to like throttle back. I'm not saying that. I'm saying do your best, which means you don't throttle back. It just means do your best and let the chips fall where they may. And that's okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is something I'm learning. There's a lot I'm learning. You guys can tell. Hard chargers don't need to charge harder. Like, I don't need to go harder. I'm going hard enough. And that's not an excuse to pull back, but like, I'm going hard. You know what I need to do? I need to enjoy a few things along the way. I really do. I want to. I don't want to worry about, oh, well, the next thing and this and that. I don't, sometimes, yes, but also, I just might want to go on a hike with my kids and, joke with them about, frogs having sex. That's good too. That's really good. And hard chargers, like myself, don't do that enough. So the guy that's asking this question, he's a hard charger. He wouldn't ask the question if he wasn't.
Yeah.
So you need to find a way to realize that you shouldn't be comparing yourself all the time to other people. I think looking to what other people are doing, it's like you're running a race and you're pacing, right? You see this person up in front of you and you're pacing off that person. And what does that do? That pushes you a little harder than you would normally go. That's a healthy way to look at what other people are doing. But if you look at that same person, you're like, that guy's way faster than me. I'm not going to be any good. Screw this. And you stop running. That's an unhealthy way to look at somebody out in front of you. Same person, same distance in front of you, two different approaches to it. Yeah. So that coupled with maybe just have some fun. Like maybe find people that are funner than you. Like I wouldn't describe myself as a fun person. I mean, I like to have fun, but if I was going to describe myself, I'd be more of a serious person. But I actually like fun people. Like Matt Jenkins, he's one of them.
Yeah.
He's fun. Totally. He's hilarious. He does and says things that I never do or say in a million years.
Yeah.
And I'm growing an appreciation for it because I would like more of that in my life. That's like rounds us out. It makes us, I think, better men.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, you had some other questions.
Oh yeah. All right, let me pull up Instagram here. I posed this on Instagram. And okay, let's scroll down here. Some good questions in here that I wanted to get to. All right, so here's one. How would you deal with an overbearing mother-in-law, particularly regarding our kids? I think we've addressed this one quite often, and this is pretty common. But I would make sure, first and foremost, you need to get on the same page with your wife. Like, that's really important because obviously she's going to have connections with her mother. She might believe a lot of the same things that her mother does, and so you need to figure out where you and her stand because there's no sides here, but is she on the spectrum? Is she going more towards the way her mother sees it, or more towards the way that you see it? And you need to figure that out because that's going to help you determine your approach. But the first thing is you have to have an ally, and that's your wife. And you and your wife are a team. It's you together, and then we can worry about in-laws and parents and extended family and all of that. So that's number one. Assuming that you guys are on the same page, and we do run across this a lot, where a wife is on the same page and she's frustrated with her own parents about what's going on, but there's some lacking boundaries because she's their daughter and she's always been subject to their authority, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But assuming she's on the same page as you, then you and your wife need to start communicating about what are the boundaries, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And you guys have to agree on what that is. So an example of that might be that your mother-in-law loves to spoil your children so much so that it's no longer grandmotherly spoiling, but it's like creating problems. And as long as you and your wife are on the same page, then it's probably about time to understand what the boundary is of, hey, mom, like, we know you love the kids. We're actually working on creating some structure and discipline around treats right now and the way that we're eating and the things that we're eating. And so we don't do desserts anymore, or we don't do, like candy at night or like whatever. I'm just making something up. And so we would really appreciate it if you didn't do that either. Now, the response to that is, well, I'm just their grandmother. I can't help. I just love them so much. And it's like, hey, we love that you love them, but we're asking that you find a different way to show it because this is important to us. Sometimes just those conversations are enough. And then if they're not, then you need to escalate because you need to make sure those boundaries are in place. And there's other things that are more serious, but at the end of the day, it's making sure your wife and you are on a team that you two know what the boundaries and expectations are, that you communicate the boundaries and expectations in a respectful, loving way to your in-laws. And then the last component of this is you have to uphold it. And that's the hardest, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
You actually have to say, no, you can't do that. And if you do that, then we're going to have to limit time with your grandchildren. And we don't want to do that because we love you and we love that you're involved in our family and our children love you and we want to be happy and we don't want to do that. But these are important things to us. Can we help you come up with some other ways of showing your love that don't involve crossing our boundaries and expectations for our children? Because we would be happy to do that. Now it becomes a collaboration instead of contention and fighting against each other.
Yeah. And they'll push back. Why? Because most people don't change. Most people run their mouth saying, hey, we're going to do this. And they don't. And they never follow through. And it's almost human nature for someone to establish a boundary and for them to push through it. Because why? You're not really serious about that crazy idea anyway. And they have their own habits and it's going to conflict. So, and make sure don't escalate like it's a big deal. It might be as simple as like, hey, mom, remember, right? We're doing this, and just, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have to be like this family drama. It might just be as simple as you making sure that, certain boundaries are withheld and communicating when those opportunities present themselves when people want to cross them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Here's another one. This one comes from look now. Names. Hey Immorati something.
Instagram names.
Holy cow! How as a man do you deal with those moments of feeling inadequate? Simple. Figure out what the inadequacy is. Figure out what you need to shore it up, and then do it. That's it. Like our society is really high on making sure people feel good all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You're like, oh, I'm feeling inadequate. I shouldn't feel that way. Why shouldn't? Maybe you are inadequate. Yeah. Why shouldn't you feel that way? Maybe you should feel that way. But society is like, no.
I shouldn't feel this way ever.
We don't want you to feel bad about yourself. No, it's okay. So just know that it's okay that you feel inadequate about yourself. It's not permanent. Like it's not this big deal that people make it out to. It just means that no, you're not good at that thing. It's like the American Idol syndrome. You watch those tryouts and like, who told you could sing? Well, my mom and my dad. And it's like, well, they lied to you and they hurt you because they don't love you. Because if they love,
now we're all making fun of you. Yeah,
they love themselves more than they love you because they weren't willing to be honest with you. Okay, so an honest assessment about your inadequacies is good. It's healthy. And then the natural progression of that is, okay, I'm not a great podcaster. I'm not a great communicator. I'm not a great, I'm not very disciplined, or I'm lazy, or I eat too much food, or I have this particular vice that I need to get. Good. Okay. Welcome to being a human being.
Now work on it.
Yeah. Let's figure it out. And you know what? It's really good. A really good way to do that is to find other people who have been through similar things and who are overcoming that currently or have overcome it in the past. And there's my segue. You can do that in the Iron Council. I mean, that's what the guys in the Iron Council are doing, right? There's pornography channel, there's sobriety channel, there's a marriage channel, there's a firearms channel, there's a health, there's an entrepreneur, there's a finance, like whatever your thing is, there's guys in there who are actively working on improving and guys in there who are doing pretty good in life in some of these departments that actually want to help you do the same. So that's at orderman.com/Iron Council. There's my shameless plug. Imposter syndrome. Here's a question about imposter syndrome. I feel like we just answered that same concept. Don't be an imposter. If you feel like an imposter, then don't be an imposter. Start telling the truth and then shore up what you need to. Let's see. Somebody says here, also would love to see another podcast with Andy Frisilla or John Lavelle. John's coming on the podcast here in the next couple of months. I don't know if I'm supposed to. I think I can say it. I think I can because he put this out there. He's got a book coming out. So founder of Warrior Poet Society. But he's coming on the podcast to talk about the book next time or in a couple months. Okay, here's one. How to take part in a new community when moving to a new city after 40 and you don't know anyone. This is really simple. You just go where people are and you just talk to them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complicate it more than that. Like, you just look, go to the gym. Like, go to the gym. Don't wear your earbuds. Just go to the gym. Talk to, not just the pretty girls, talk to everybody.
Yeah.
No outcome, no desired outcome. No, just go talk. If there's a business luncheon, go to the business luncheon and ask people. That's a good thing. Ask people questions. If you're at a restaurant and the server is, interesting, or like, just ask them a question. Hey, I'm new here. Like, what do you do for fun? Like, there's some cool things, local things I need to be aware of. It's so simple. If there's like, I don't know what you're into, but everybody's into something. If it's shooting or hiking or painting or underwater basket weaving or like what, I don't know. I don't know what your thing is. Jump online. Underwater basket weaving, XYZ City, USA. You're going to find a bunch of other dorks who do the same thing that you want to do, and you guys can go be dorks together. And I say that with like we're dorks. We're all dorky. We all have our things that we geek out on, and you can find them. You just have to take the initiative to go do it, and then to open your mouth and ask questions. For some people, that's easier than others, but it's not hard to ask people questions, and you're
Totally.
going to get better at it as you do.
Well, and while you're at it, get to know all your neighbors on your street. Like,
Yes, good
make
point.
that, I mean, we should be doing that anyway. You should know who lives in your neighborhood, who lives in the house that your kids walk by every single day. Like, you should know all those people, and you don't have to be best friends, but you should know them well enough that you can call on them. They can call on you. You live in a community, act like a community, and get to know those individuals.
Yep, agreed. Agreed. All right, so here's another one. This one comes from Superstar. Oh no, sorry, that's not him. This one comes from the real Bennett Vo. He says, "In what places is stoicism necessary, and in what places should men be more open?" Well,
All places,
those
and you
two things aren't at
misunderstand
odds.
stoicism.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
But like, those
Yeah.
aren't like either or. I mean, you could be open and honest about things, but still be stoic about it. Like, I can be open and honest with, somebody I care about maybe something I'm dealing with personally, but not be like a blubbering idiot who doesn't have a plan or a way to fix his problems. And that's actually the issue I take with this concept of vulnerability you hear a lot about. Like, some people
Yeah.
think that vulnerability is just be vulnerable, just blurt out all your shit and all your baggage. I'm like, why? Well, it's just because you can be vulnerable. But yeah, but tell me why. Well, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
good for you. I don't know, you just should. No. Okay. No. The reason you do that, the reason you would be vulnerable or open, as this guy says, is so that you can partner with other people in your struggles. That's why you do
Yeah.
that, because other people will listen to you. They'll put their arm around you, which you need at
They'll
times.
support you.
They'll
Yep.
support you. A good friend will give you a kick in the pants if that's what's needed. That's why you expose vulnerabilities. If you think about the concept of vulnerability, think about it in the concept of battle. If you have a castle, you have this big, beautiful castle, and you've got thousands of people inside, and you're the king of this castle. It's your job to defend the kingdom. It's your job to make sure people are safe. It's your job to make sure people are prosperous and they're fulfilled and they're happy. And this neighboring, warring tribe comes to the gates because they want to tear down everything about your beautiful city that you've created and all the people in it. What do? You start exploring the weaknesses. Well, that side of that wall over there is not real strong because we got attacked, years ago, and we haven't fortified that, so we better go fortify that. Oh man, the drawbridge, like that thing's a problem. It's wood, and so it can burn. Like, we need to maybe think about having a steel gate so that it won't burn so quickly. You start thinking about your vulnerabilities so that you can protect what's yours. And that's what we should be doing when we're exposing our own vulnerabilities, even if they're emotional. It's not to dump your baggage on people. It's so that you can enlist help and figure out how to be better, how not to have those same vulnerabilities, how not to have those same flaws or inadequacies. So but you can only do that by being stoic, because if you're talking about being open, and if you're equating openness to being a blubbering idiot and overly ruled by your emotions, then that doesn't create any sort of path to progression. It just
Yeah, you're
keeps you
just looking for
stuck.
validation of where you
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
So stoicism is like, well, let's figure this out. You're weak, you're cowardly, you lack courage. I mean, these are all like human conditions, right? We're lazy, we're immediate gratification. So stoicism is like, well, let's acknowledge what it is, and then let's not fuel it. Let's figure out a way to overcome that. But part of stoicism is acknowledging the truth. It's not about delusion. And the truth is, you're sad, you're scared, you're intimidated at times. These are all truths that we
Yeah.
should be aware of so that we can actually do something with it. Do you see it a different way?
No, I see it exactly that way. And this is, I mean, it's not semantics. It's actually a misunderstanding of stoicism altogether. And this is very common that people think stoicism is someone not managing their emotions, tucking it underneath the rug, not addressing anything, and keeping to yourself. That's not what it means to be stoic. And so, but very major common misunderstanding of stoicism. So that's
Kip, have
probably
you
where
ever
it's
told anybody
hung
like
up.
in the like relatively recently that you were scared
Um,
in a way?
yeah,
Maybe you not that verbiage
yeah,
exactly, but in a way.
yeah, totally.
Did that person think less of you, and did that diminish or devalue the relationship or your standing in the relationship with them?
No, not at all. If anything, it lets people know like where you are. And let's be frank, most areas that we try to hide from, people are aware of anyway. And so when they see us be present to those, it's actually empowering because then they're like, oh, he sees it too. Right. And there's a sense of connection, right? If I go to you, Ryan, and I express like, hey man, I'm really nervous about this. I'm scared about this or whatever. Like I trusted you to share that with you. And that actually means something. And that also lets you know that I'm on this path of like, how am I addressing that? If I handle it appropriately.
Here's an interesting thing about, well, let's take a house for example. I've got this new place that I'm in, and had some spare keys made up, and I gave one to my ex. I don't know that she'll need a reason to come in, but if she needs a reason to be here, like I'd like her to have a key. I gave one to my son, and that's it. When I left Maine, I gave a couple of keys to some neighbors just in case. I don't know what's like. I'd like them to have access to my house if they need to be in there for whatever reason. But who do you give a key to? People you trust,
People you trust.
people you love, people you care about, people who will be respectful of your property.
Yeah.
So think about giving a key to your wife. And I'm not talking about a physical key, I'm talking about a key to inside, like what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And when you give the key, so you give a key to, let's say I gave that key to my son. I'm like, hey bud, like I don't know if you'll need to get in here when you're not here, but I want you to have this key. If something's wrong, you need to come here, you need to get away, like you need to get something, like I want you to have this key. Do you think he's like, what an idiot? He gave me a key to the house. He's a loser. No, he's
You
like,
just
wow,
elevated your relationship with him.
exactly. He's like, oh my gosh, my dad trusts me. This is an awesome gift. I'm gonna take care of this gift. I'm gonna treat it respectfully. That's what good people do that you trust, who's the only people you'd give a key to. And it's the same thing with the way you feel. Like when you share these things, you're giving somebody a key, and they don't think you're a loser because you're giving them a key to what's going on inside of you. They're like, oh my gosh, what a gift. Like this person trusts me. And now I feel better because I know that I'm a trustworthy person in that individual's eyes. I'm trying to explore this a lot more than I have in the past, um, but I also think we don't need to like dump our baggage on them. So if we're going to go with the metaphor of the house thing, I'm not going to give you the key and say, hey, and while you're there, do my laundry, mop the floors, pick up the trash, and clean the house. But that's what we do with our emotions. It's like, here's the key. And by the way, comfort me, console me. When I cry and get upset, like be there for me, validate me. That's what we do. That's not what you do. You give them the key, but there's also an expectation that you're not looking for anything from them. Otherwise, it's not a gift. It's like an exchange. And that's not why we do it.
Well, and you're not really truly dealing with the scenario if you're sharing in a way of just validation, right?
Right. Exactly. All right. Let's take one or two more here.
Okay.
How can young sons of weak tyrant fathers reconcile their relationships with their dad? Uh, empathy. Empathy. Look, I'm not saying you need to expose yourself, especially if there's abuse, but I'll tell you what, like, I have more empathy for my dad than I did in the past because, well, he went through divorce with my mom and I kind of always held that against him. And now that I've gone through that myself, I'm like, oh shit, like that's hard. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted that. And I see it in a
Sure.
new light. And so I think you can have some empathy towards a tyrant, maybe even an abusive father. And again, I'm not saying you need to open yourself up or expose yourself to abuse, and you shouldn't, but you can have some closure by just having empathy. You know, I don't know what his
Understanding.
upbringing was. I don't know
Yeah.
what he's dealing with. Maybe he was doing the best that he could. Maybe he was dealing. In fact, I know he was dealing with his own demons, and so it's okay. Like, there's a lot of things I learned from him, and there's a lot of things that I wish I would have done differently. And there's a lot of things I learned from him that I don't want to be that way. So let's. I think maybe not place as heavy emphasis on it. Like I have a lot of guys who will reach out and they'll say, um, Ryan, I'm 30 years old and my dad was never around. And now I feel like I missed out on all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, it would have been awesome for your dad to be around. It really would have. It would be as a young man, and I don't have that, but as a young man, it would have been awesome if your dad was around. But you're 30 and he
And he
wasn't.
wasn't.
And
Yeah.
now it's time to figure out what you need to do. So let's take our dads off the pedestal. He might have been a great man and he deserves your respect and care and admiration. He might have been a horrible man. But either way, he's got to come down off the pedestal because now it's your turn. It's your kingdom now. It's your turn to make your life. And if you're still living under the rule of your father, you're always going to be a prince. I don't want to be a prince. I don't like the analogy of like the king thing. Like I don't
Yeah.
necessarily like that, but it makes a point. Like I don't want to be a prince in my own kingdom. I want to be the king of my own kingdom. And that requires me to replace either the current king, which could be a father, or move away from the king and go out and start my own thing. That's something that needs to happen.
Yeah. No, nothing. Keep going.
All right, I think we can take one more here.
Yeah.
Let's find one here. Okay, so here I like this one. Here's an interesting one. How can you filter out what we read and watch? We should be informed, but it can also drag us down. I'm going to turn. Are you good answering that one first? I have a couple thoughts, but I'd like to hear
Sure.
from you, Kip, on that.
Okay. So how do we stay informed but not
How
let
do we,
that
yeah,
stuff
how do
like
you
weigh us down?
filter out what you read and watch? And we should be informed, but it can also drag us down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm in a bad attitude or I have like a negative attitude. So I'll let you validate if I'm off base here. But we hear
That's
that
why
a
I'm here.
lot,
I'm
right?
here to validate you.
It's like
So whatever
it's
I
a
can do.
cliche. Yeah, it's a cliche. Well, we all need to be well informed. And I don't know, like to what extent? Right. So you can walk around having a conversation with people like, oh, did you hear this thing that's completely outside my realm of control? And I can have a conversation around it, right? Like I would be careful of your definition of being informed and how it's serving you. I think most things that people are being well informed about are distractions that are preventing them from actually executing on the things within their realm of control. And I'm tired of it. Like I am so tired of the debates around, well, our medical system or, oh, our government and whatever. But yet they're not going to the gym every day. Their relationship with their kids suck. They don't have their home in order. They're not living to a full potential, but we're willing to get distracted about all these things outside of our realm of control. I'm a huge believer And I think Jordan Peterson uses this quite a bit. It's like, you're not in a position to make a difference anyway, because you haven't even learned how to deal with your own.
Mm.
And just imagine if we all did that first. We'd all be better off. So to that, I'd say, what's in your realm of control? Are you hustling and you're taking care of that? And make sure that being quote unquote well-informed isn't just a distraction from you showing up powerfully within the things within your realm of control.
I like it. The only thing I would add, Kip, to that is be careful in being overly vested in some sort of, dogma. Like if you
Yeah.
see yourself getting emotionally charged, okay. So speaking of stoicism, here's an appropriate use of stoicism. Don't get all riled up and hot and bothered about things, anything, nothing.
Yeah.
Because if you start to get, I'm talking about the good and the bad. Like if you're like a roller
Yep.
coaster, wham, 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 wrong. You're so easily controlled and manipulated. I think most of us ought to work on a more level. And I'm not saying you're not emotional. I'm not saying things don't excite you. I'm saying we just don't need to respond aggressively or
Hot and cold.
overcompensate.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's just a funny analogy is, you hear about averages in the stock market. Like, oh, I'm just trying to get the average. And my buddy used to say something like, well, you could put your feet in the oven. No, you could put your feet in an ice bath and your head in the oven. On average, the temperature's good, but you're going to die. So if on
That's funny,
average
dude.
you're pretty decent, but they call it standard deviation in the financial world. If the standard deviation is just all over the place, it's a mess. Your standard deviation should be minimal. When things go wrong, this is a great thing on Rudyard Kipling's If, that you can react the same. And I'm paraphrasing, you can react the same whether things are amazing or whether they're horrible. And if you can react the same in both of those environments, you'll be a man, my son.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be working on. So if you notice yourself getting all charged up and hot and bothered and bugged by, something somebody said, maybe you're letting that person or that influence have too much control over your life, and you should refrain from that a bit, or you should temper it with something else. I'd say that's a pretty good indicator for you.
Well, and it's exhausting, right?
It
Like
is
even you
exhausting.
explain it, I feel tired. I'm like, it's just exhausting to go hot and cold all the time.
Yeah, truly,
Yeah.
truly. Well, Kip, I appreciate you, man. Why don't you bring us home?
Yeah. So a couple things. I mean, obviously connect with us on the socials. You can connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler, as well as on the Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And coming up next month, we're going to be opening up the membership of the Iron Council. That's our exclusive brotherhood. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Of course, we'll announce it here when that membership is open, but you can also subscribe to that newsletter to stay connected as well in regards to when we open up membership. So we're excited to get a new
30 days
cohort
now.
Yeah, we're excited to get the new cohort of gentlemen joining the Iron Council next month.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Appreciate the questions. Really good ones today. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.